We wanted to talk about the situation with refereeing. You've interviewed Fergal Horgan. Obviously, he's refed 3 of the last 5 All-Ireland finals. Very, very accomplished referee. But there is a huge problem. And just when I had a read of your piece, one of the things that stood out to me is Horgan saying we had 127 or 128 active referees in the county pre-COVID. It's down to around 80 now. And then talking about a match called off recently in West Tip in under 17. I mean, that's a fairly... Everyone kind of knows there's an issue with refereeing, but like when it's given to you in black and white like that, it really highlights it.
Yeah, no, I was asked to speak to Fergal for a piece for the Kilmacud yearbook. I suppose when Kilmacud had the sevens the last few years, they would have done a booklet, or they would have had a book. I think they had a booklet or a big program, and I would have contributed to that. But now there has been no sevens. They still do an end of year yearbook, and they still want to do interviews. So they asked me to speak to Fergal, and it's just through our conversation. He brought up a couple of things that were happening at home, and I asked him, "Can I use this for a piece in the paper?" And he said, "Fine." And I suppose it just brings it home that people think, okay, if we have no players, you have no games. If you have no referees, you have no games. Like people think, oh, sure, it's 80 referees, sure, they're still well stocked, but like if you look at this weekend, you have 24 games in the senior intermediate championship. Throw in the junior matches around the area. Throw in the camogie matches where some of those referees will be. You have you have juvenile finals. You're down to juvenile knockout games. Like that, you won't be that 80 referees goes by very, very quickly. I remember remarking the last weekend of games in hurling. I would have watched one match on telly. I was at 4 matches myself. The same referee was at every one of those 5 matches. He refed 1 and he was linesman at 4. Like that's a fair commitment. Like so, and you can be sure he's not the only one doing that. That there's going to be guys out this weekend doing. He could be covering 4, 5, 6, 7 matches. Like, and what are they getting for a few expenses, like, and a bit of a flat fee? So look, you could think that if we don't get more referees into the county, whatever, like people say there's a crisis in refereeing because of standard. The crisis coming soon is going to be numbers, and there's going to be county boards are going to be deciding structures for competitions, not on the amount of games. It will be how many games can we put on that we can get played because we had the referee numbers. Will we get to a stage where we're going to have no linesmen, that referees are going to be so thin on the ground that we can only afford to have one official at a game, and that clubs are going to be asked to provide somebody to do a linesman as you do?
Which is a disaster.
That's it. Like I think people watching this and people in the county are going to have to get real. Like I think they had to bring in a referee from Waterford to referee a South Championship match recently at some level or other. Like that's bad. That's a bad reflection on Tip. And I know this year in Tipperary they had to cancel the referees course because again lack of interest. And Fergal Horgan revealed to me that when he did his course back in 2009, he had to do it in Limerick because there was no course in Tip because again lack of interest. So, but I would hear things in that Dublin there's a plentiful supply of referees. I just wonder why is it in Tip that it's such a turn off. And we always hear about these things of abuse and things like that. But is that it? Like why is it such a turn off in Tip compared to other counties? I don't get
That's the same in Dublin in terms of like the amount of jawing that a referee get over the course of the game, because they make just as many mistakes in Tipperary or get just as much right and wrong. So there's lots of it up here too, and people do constantly talk up here about whether the standard of refereeing is as good as it is elsewhere. But I mean, it's hard to have a really good standard of referee across the board when nobody wants to do it. Like if everybody wanted to be a carpenter, you'd have nothing but brilliant carpenters everywhere. But if no one actually wants to do it, what do you expect? They're not going to be great. It's actually hard to find one at the moment, actually, as it happens. If you want,
it's actually something I'd love to have done myself, but I wouldn't be prepared to have a transactory. Jeez, Brophy, stick that in the paper. That why don't you write about that? Or like it'll be thrown back. That's why I've never done it and never will do it while I'm in the media. Like so, I actually don't understand. I don't know how Liam Hogan did it for so long, being a ref and a local reporter in our Tipperary. I give him great credit for that. Like, but it's.
Can I add something else in, Shane?
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking, since I saw your piece, and people should have Ariva pick up a copy of the Guardian there today, but I was there thinking to myself, as a young person, like, you know, when you were a kid and you were playing GAA, there was no incentive. You would never think about being a referee. I mean, as well as being a sub, it's probably as hard to take. If you were asked to go out and referee a game, you wouldn't want it. But, like, can there be any sort of an incentive put in from underage that, like, even, you know, when you're playing underage games that, you know, or at training sessions or whatever, that you have turns where one young lad will referee or one young girl will referee for a while, even during a training session, during a blitz, during something like that, that you would designate, let's say there's a massive blitz, that you would designate one of your players to go over and ref one match and another player to ref, and whatever. So it becomes a very normal thing. That mightn't be the perfectly thought out example, but it's just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I personally, I know it was done in Borrisokane a long number of years ago. I'm not sure there was a young whistlers program in some of the secondary schools where, I think in TY, where I suppose lads between 12 and 18 were encouraged. I'm not sure whether it was something that was done to tick off your list for credits or what, but things like that. And I think a lot of the under 11 Go Games matches this year have been refereed by teenagers that would have gone through the Young Whistlers program. So, like, things like that where you could maybe get them inculcated into used to refereeing, and maybe I suppose you'd be less. Maybe you would be, if you were a coach or a parent on the sideline, you'd be less likely to abuse maybe a teenager for refereeing as you would be somebody older. Well, look, I don't agree with abuse in any case. Look, I'd hold my hand up and say I've given a fair bit of back chat to referees over the years when they've been on a sideline, and like I'd never shy away from. Well, I don't like doing it. I would have done it. I'd never feel good about myself for doing it. But sometimes you do get frustrated with a call, and maybe you feel a ref is being harsh against you. Look, as Fergal said, look, if you give it, you're prepared to take it. And I'd have no problem a referee giving me back chat if I thought I deserved it, like being an official. I've been a selector on the sideline, like, so I probably deserve it if that was the case. But like, it's like something has to be done. I would always have thought that referee, like people say, I get bored of this thing at county board meetings where I call in clubs to go out there and find referees. That's the wrong approach. And Fergal Horgan agreed with me. Refereeing is almost like the priesthood or being a doctor or a nurse. It's more of a calling. You have to. I'd love to see something done where Fergal Horgan maybe is invited to somewhere in Borrisokane, maybe, for example, and on a Tuesday night. And if you were in Laura, in Shannon Rovers, Knockshee, Kilrowan, Killadangan, just the clubs in that area, if you were interested, like, Fergal will be there on that night. Go, like, and that you make it known to everybody, and that person, if you're interested in refereeing Shane Brophy, that he will go without being asked. You know, that sort of a way, because I think that's the only way you're going to go about it. Is it's like you just say you're a secretary of a club and you go ringing around. Do you want to be a ref? Do you want to be a ref? It's something that's. I think it's something that's within your own consciousness. That this is something actually I'd like to try and do. Whereas if you were asked to do it, you're probably going to defensive straight away and think, no, I'm not going to do that. Whereas maybe if you're going to do it of your own free will and volition, it might be something that you might end up doing, but you might end up doing long term, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was only last month that Sil Doyle, who's involved in organising referees in a certain area in Wexford, he was kind of talking about this, and he said, and the drop in referees in their area, and he said, it's been difficult since the beginning of the year. Croke Park would not give the go-ahead for training or the holding of a course due to COVID-19. There are 3 online courses along with 1 in-house course. We got a few names from ringing around, but we had little or no response from clubs. Recently, some underage games were unable to take place as no referees were available. That's the reality. We've 5 to 7 referees who still have to undertake the training program, so they've been unable to officiate at games. Hopefully, they'll be able to complete their training course. This will then be forwarded to Croke Park, so we'll have to await the outcome. Now, that was a month or so. I'm sure that's been sorted since.
One idea I would have thought would be, okay, maybe certain people wouldn't want to be a referee, but maybe they'll agree to be a linesman or something. But then I was thinking, the amount of crap linesmen have to put up with from mentors at the moment, like thinking that linesmen actually have power, like thinking that they're actually soccer referees, where at least those linesmen have a bit of power. Current linesmen really have, hurling linesmen and football linesmen have really no power, or rather they spot something off the ball. And then if you do see something off the ball and the guy gets up red card, you said, what are you doing that for? Like, Jesus, trying to get involved in the game. So you're damned if you do.
And he's so close to the crowd, and you're so close to the crowd as a linesman. Imagine you're in McDonagh Park in Nina, and you get a decision that people don't agree with, and the crowd are just right over you. That would be
if you don't see something, you're blind, and if somebody isn't, then if you do give a red card and it's too severe, so Jesus Christ, you're getting too involved in the game when you shouldn't leave it to the referee. So you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't.
If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/ourgame.